Ancient Egypt was a land of mystery and wonder. Its civilization, one of the oldest in the world, has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and the general public for centuries. The grandeur of its monuments, the complexity of its hieroglyphics, and the richness of its mythology all contribute to its enduring allure. The ancient Egyptians were deeply religious people, and their beliefs permeated every aspect of their lives. From the grand temples that dotted the landscape to the intricate rituals performed daily, religion was at the heart of Egyptian society. The ancient Egyptians were very religious people. Their religion was polytheistic, meaning they worshipped many gods and goddesses. Each deity had its own unique attributes, responsibilities, and stories. The gods were believed to control various aspects of the natural world and human life. For example, Ra was the sun god, and he was considered the king of the gods. Osiris was the god of the underworld and the afterlife, while Isis, his wife, was the goddess of magic and motherhood. These deities were not just distant figures, they were an integral part of daily life. They believed in many gods and goddesses. The pantheon of Egyptian gods was vast and varied, with each region and city having its own patron deities. The gods were often depicted in human form with animal heads, symbolizing their divine nature and their connection to the natural world. For instance, Anubis, the god of mummification and the afterlife, was depicted with the head of a jackal. The Egyptians believed that these gods and goddesses had the power to influence their lives in both positive and negative ways. They believed that these gods controlled the forces of nature. The Nile River, which was the lifeblood of Egypt, was believed to be under the control of the god Hapi. The annual flooding of the Nile, which brought fertile soil to the land, was seen as a blessing from the gods. The Egyptians also believed that the gods could control the weather, the harvest, and even the outcome of battles. This belief in divine intervention shaped their worldview and influenced their actions. The ancient Egyptians built huge temples. These temples were not just places of worship, they were also centers of economic and political power. The temples were often dedicated to specific gods and were designed to be the earthly homes of these deities. The priests who served in the temples performed daily rituals to honor the gods and ensure their favor. The construction of these temples was a massive undertaking, requiring the labor of thousands of workers and the resources of the entire kingdom. They made offerings to their gods. These offerings could be anything from food and drink to precious metals and stones. The purpose of these offerings was to appease the gods and gain their favor. The Egyptians believed that if they neglected their religious duties, the gods would become angry and bring misfortune upon them. Therefore, making offerings was an essential part of their religious practice. The offerings were often placed on altars in the temples, and the priests would perform rituals to present them to the gods. The Egyptians believed that if they honored the gods, they would have a good life. This belief was reflected in their daily activities and their interactions with each other. They believed that the gods could influence every aspect of their lives, from their health and prosperity to their relationships and careers. By honoring the gods and following their teachings, the Egyptians hoped to ensure a good life for themselves and their families. This belief in divine favor was a powerful motivator and shaped their behavior and decisions. They also believed in an afterlife. The concept of the afterlife was central to Egyptian religion. They believed that after death, the soul would embark on a journey to the underworld, where it would be judged by Osiris, the god of the underworld. If the soul was found to be pure and righteous, it would be granted eternal life in the field of reeds, a paradise where the deceased could live in peace and happiness. This belief in the afterlife influenced their burial practices and the construction of elaborate tombs. They believed that when they died, they would be judged by Osiris, the god of the underworld. The judgment process involved weighing the heart of the deceased against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was deemed worthy and allowed to enter the afterlife. If the heart was heavier, it was devoured by Ammit, a fearsome creature, and the soul would cease to exist. This belief in judgment and the afterlife was a powerful influence on Egyptian culture and motivated them to live virtuous lives. Ra was the most important god in ancient Egypt. Revered and worshipped by millions, he was considered the king of all gods. His influence was so profound that he was often merged with other deities, creating powerful hybrid gods like Amun-Ra and Atum-Ra. His presence was felt in every aspect of Egyptian life, from the rising of the sun to the rituals performed in his honor. He was the god of the sun, embodying its life-giving energy and its destructive power. The sun was seen as a symbol of creation and destruction, and Ra, as its personification, held the balance between these forces. His daily journey across the sky was a testament to his strength and endurance, a cycle that brought light and warmth to the world. The Egyptians believed that Ra created the world. According to their mythology, Ra emerged from the chaotic waters of Nun, bringing order and life. He spoke the world into existence, and his tears were said to have created humanity. This act of creation was celebrated in numerous hymns and prayers, highlighting his role as the ultimate creator. They believed that every day Ra sailed across the sky in his solar boat. This journey was not just a simple passage, it was a battle against the forces of darkness. As he sailed, he brought light to the world, ensuring the survival of all living beings. His boat, often depicted with a crew of other gods, was a symbol of his divine authority and his unending vigilance. At night, Ra traveled through the underworld. This perilous journey was fraught with dangers as he faced the serpent Apophis, a symbol of chaos and destruction. Each night, Ra's victory over Apophis ensured the rebirth of the sun and the continuation of life. This nightly battle was a powerful metaphor for the eternal struggle between order and chaos. He fought against the forces of chaos. Ra's battles were not just physical but also symbolic, representing the constant fight to maintain balance in the universe. His victories were celebrated in temples and depicted in art, serving as a reminder of his strength and the importance of order in the world. Ra was a powerful god. His influence extended beyond the physical realm, touching the spiritual and the cosmic. He was a symbol of power, authority, and divine right. Pharaohs often aligned themselves with Ra, claiming his divine lineage to legitimize their rule. His image, often depicted with a sun disk and a falcon head, was a constant reminder of his omnipresence and his might. He represented light, warmth, and growth. Ra's energy was seen as the source of all life, nurturing crops and sustaining the natural world. His warmth was a comfort to the people, a sign of his benevolence and his care for humanity. Festivals and rituals were held in his honor, celebrating his gifts and seeking his favor for bountiful harvests and prosperity. The ancient Egyptians built many temples to honor Ra. The most famous temple was Heliopolis. This was the center of Ra's worship. People prayed to Ra for good harvests and protection from evil. They also held festivals to celebrate Ra. One of the most important festivals was the Hebsed. This was a festival of renewal and rebirth. Osiris was the god of the underworld. In ancient Egyptian mythology, he held a significant role as the deity who presided over the afterlife. His influence extended far beyond just being a god. He was a symbol of eternal life and resurrection. Osiris was often depicted as a mummified king holding a crook and flail, which were symbols of kingship and power. His green skin represented rebirth and regeneration, emphasizing his connection to the cycle of life and death. He was also the god of the dead and rebirth. The ancient Egyptians believed that Osiris had the power to grant life after death, making him a central figure in their funerary practices. His story was one of death and resurrection, which provided hope for an afterlife to the ancient Egyptians. The rituals associated with Osiris were elaborate and aimed at ensuring a safe passage to the afterlife. These rituals included the mummification process and the recitation of spells from the Book of the Dead. According to Egyptian mythology, Osiris was a king of Egypt. He was a just and benevolent ruler who brought civilization to the land. Under his reign, the people of Egypt learned agriculture, laws, and religious practices. Osiris's rule was marked by peace and prosperity, and he was greatly loved by his subjects. His teachings and leadership laid the foundation for the rich cultural and religious traditions of ancient Egypt. He was murdered by his brother, Set. Set, driven by jealousy and a desire for power, conspired to kill Osiris. He tricked Osiris into lying in a beautifully crafted coffin, which he then sealed and threw into the Nile River. This act of betrayal plunged Egypt into chaos and mourning. Set's treachery was not just a personal vendetta, but a cosmic struggle between order and chaos, good and evil. Osiris's wife, Isis, brought him back to life. Isis, the goddess of magic and healing, was devoted to her husband. She searched tirelessly for his body and, with the help of her sister Nephthys, found and reassembled Osiris's dismembered body. Using her magical powers, she resurrected him, allowing him to live again, albeit in the underworld. This act of love and devotion by Isis was celebrated in Egyptian mythology and highlighted the themes of loyalty and the power of magic. But Osiris decided to become the ruler of the underworld. After his resurrection, Osiris chose to reign over the afterlife rather than return to the mortal world. He became the lord of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, where he presided over the souls of the deceased. His role was to ensure that the dead were judged fairly, and to grant eternal life to those who were deemed worthy. Osiris's presence in the underworld provided comfort to the living, as they believed he would guide and protect them in the afterlife. He became the judge of the dead. In the hall of Ma'at, Osiris oversaw the weighing of the heart ceremony, where the hearts of the deceased were weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was granted eternal life in the field of reeds. If it was heavier, the soul was devoured by the monster Ammit. Osiris's role as the judge of the dead was crucial in maintaining the balance of the universe and ensuring that justice was served in the afterlife. The ancient Egyptians believed in an afterlife. They believed that the afterlife was a paradise. But only good people could enter the afterlife. The Egyptians developed a process called mummification. This preserved the body after death. They believed that the body was needed for the afterlife. Isis was the wife of Osiris. She was the goddess of magic, motherhood, and healing. Isis was a very powerful goddess. She was known for her love and loyalty. Isis used her magic to protect her husband and son. She is often shown in art as a beautiful woman wearing a crown. Isis was one of the most popular goddesses in ancient Egypt. People prayed to her for help with healing, protection, and fertility. She had many temples dedicated to her. One of the most famous temples was at Philae. Women prayed to Isis for help with childbirth. She was a symbol of hope and comfort. The ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses were worshipped for thousands of years. They played a very important role in Egyptian culture. The Egyptians believed that the gods controlled every aspect of their lives. They told stories about the gods. They built temples and monuments. The ancient Egyptians left behind a rich legacy of art, architecture, and literature. The ancient Egyptian religion had a profound influence on other cultures. The Greeks and Romans adopted some of the Egyptian gods and goddesses. The ancient Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife influenced early Christianity. Even today, people are still fascinated by the ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses. They were powerful symbols of life, death, and the afterlife.